So while Bitcoin's price is stuck at $115,000 a coin, and everybody's distracted with what Coinbase and Brian Armstrong is doing at the world's largest Bitcoin exchange, I think what the $4.9 trillion giant Fidelity just announced yesterday might have just finally ended this paper Bitcoin discussion. So what are we talking about? Fidelity has just filed for in-kind Bitcoin redemptions, meaning there might be no paper Bitcoin at the $4.9 trillion giant Fidelity. But where do they get the idea from? This is what kind of has me a little bit interested, because let's not forget, Fidelity does own $24 billion of Bitcoin in their ETF, and maybe they just copied Hong Kong's in-kind Bitcoin ETF model. And I think that's a coincidence, but I also think it's a coincidence that BlackRock just published this 19-page report in the very same week that their major competitor, Fidelity, is launching in-kind Bitcoin redemptions. Let's break down what is actually going on with this paper Bitcoin attack and whether we could see Bitcoin finally unleashed to fly higher. So let's kind of set the stage a little bit. Everybody's been watching the number of Bitcoin leave the exchanges over the past 2 years, and they're really sat back in their chair, they're scratching their head, and they're saying, how can we watch the ETFs and public companies collectively buy more than 2.5 million Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin is still pretty much at its inflation-adjusted 2021 all-time high. Again, Bitcoin hit $65,000 in 2021, but if you adjust for inflation, the real all-time high is pretty much $100,000. We really haven't moved much higher since 2021 when we actually account for inflation. So everybody's really confused, and I think paper Bitcoin is probably the best explanation for why we're not seeing the price of Bitcoin move up aggressively. And again, this has been a hot topic for a long time, such a hot topic, even the CEO of Coinbase had to come out and deny the rumors that they were selling paper Bitcoin to BlackRock. We all thought that was interesting when that happens. This was late 2024. But again, what I think is really interesting is exchanges are now starting to take action. We know that Bitwise has added proof of reserves for its ETF, but I saw this come out yesterday. We got a $5 billion exchange called BitGet. They've come out and said, yeah, you know what? We're also going to add a little bit more transparency to our Bitcoin holdings. And they just published proof of reserves for their exchange. I think this is maybe it's a sign of things to come, because I do think these things kind of get rolled out in a competitive nature. Okay. If one exchange adds proof of reserves like BitGet just did, then other exchanges might be forced to follow. If Fidelity, the second largest Bitcoin exchange, adds proof of reserves, guess what? Maybe BlackRock will be forced to do the same thing. That's what I'm speculating, but I'm more interested on the timeline. So this is potentially going to be rolled out in October. So it's likely to happen in October. But what I'm more interested in is how much Bitcoin is going to be left on Coinbase come October. I'm not so sure there's going to be much left, especially when we start considering how much Bitcoin these public treasury companies have been buying of late. They are ramping up the amount of Bitcoin that they're buying. It's not slowing down. I'm seriously concerned about how much Bitcoin will be left on exchanges by October. And when these ETFs do start rolling out in-kind redemptions, I'm very optimistic, I'm positive, I'm bullish on what this could mean for the Bitcoin market. We might finally get some transparency, and this transparency is coming as this bull run is just starting to heat up. Again, if we kind of zoom out a little bit, I want to show you guys what I'm paying most attention to. That, of course, is the fact that Bitcoin right now is still at $115,000 a coin, despite having 80,000 Bitcoin dumped over it. I do want to talk about that dump that did recently happen. It's one of the wildest and biggest market dumps of Bitcoin that we've seen since Germany sold a lot of Bitcoin. But I'm more interested in the strength that Bitcoin's showing right now. $118,000 a coin. And it looks as if Bitcoin hasn't even sneezed. Bitcoin straight up has not even reacted to what's happening. I think this is incredibly telling. I think this is incredibly bullish. And I think that now we might start to see a little bit of a shift in what's happening. I'm really interested to see what is to come. So what is to come is that Fidelity is now going to be copying Hong Kong and their Bitcoin ETF, which of course has in-kind redemptions. So here we can see IBIT has $86 billion in their Bitcoin ETF. And I think now that Fidelity, a $24.2 billion ETF, the second biggest, guess what? I think this is going to apply some pressure to BlackRock. I think this is going to force BlackRock to pay attention and also potentially offer in-kind redemptions to their Bitcoin ETF. Of course, this race so far, the Bitcoin ETF race, it's been won by BlackRock. BlackRock, there is no second best. You can see after, halfway through 2024, they just started to pull away, and they've pulled away further and further month after month. And hey, I mean, maybe Fidelity is making this move now to try to catch up, make a little bit of ground, come back a little bit. Who knows? It's certainly a possibility. It's something I'm watching very closely. I think this race of the Bitcoin ETFs, I think it's still early. Obviously, it's incredibly early. I don't think we're in the late stages of this, I think, let's put it this way. I think the ETFs have just begun. And I think we're going to see a lot more Bitcoin scooped into these Bitcoin ETFs. We can see the amount of Bitcoin held by these firms, whether it's the ETFs, the public companies, the governments, the private companies. It's increasing by about 4% every 30 days. That's a lot. That's a lot of Bitcoin when you start thinking about it. Collectively, they hold 3.6 million coins. And I think a lot of the Bitcoin on these balance sheets is not going to move for a long time. And this is where I start to get concerned about the scarcity of Bitcoin. Okay, we've got 21 million Bitcoin, about 20 million are mined today. We know that 5 million are lost. Now we've got 3.6 million Bitcoin sitting on the balance sheets of entities who do not appear to be motivated sellers. I've showed you guys this chart. Look at the direction of all of these lines of the biggest Bitcoin treasury companies. It's up and to the right. It's very, very rare that these companies are selling Bitcoin. The 90% of them are buying Bitcoin and not selling. I think this is what's really interesting. And this is what kind of has me concerned. Now, I had this chart sent to me from a viewer of the YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I want to give his name away. So all I'm going to say is thank you, Mr. Robbins, for putting together this chart. And we can see in this light blue here, 11.4% of the Bitcoin, the total Bitcoin, it's held on exchanges. People forget this. Like, exchanges do not hold the lion's share of Bitcoin. This is not the gold market, where the large majority of the gold is held in these big bullion banks, where it can be rehypothecated. It doesn't matter if you're a gold bug. It doesn't matter how hard you vote or you scream or you try to beg the banks to change the rules. They're not going to change the rules. There's 300 paper contracts for 1 ounce of physical gold. That's right. For every 1 ounce of gold there is in a bullion bank, there's 300 paper contracts for that same 1 ounce of gold. This is why the price of gold has been suppressed and has been clamped down for so many years. The majority of the supply is in the bank. Bitcoin is very different. We can see this right here. 11% of the Bitcoin is sat on exchanges, and the amount of Bitcoin left, well, have a look at that. It is rapidly shrinking. It's sinking like a rock, and it looks as if I think the next 6 months could be really interesting as we see more exchanges, multi-billion-dollar exchanges, add proof of reserves. And again, this isn't just me speculating that things are going to get really interesting. BlackRock published this report earlier in the week. And again, BlackRock, they are the biggest culprit of this paper Bitcoin narrative, right? It's Coinbase, it's BlackRock. These are the guys we need to be paying attention to. Okay, again, I always tell you, Don't leave your Bitcoin on Coinbase. Don't trust Brian Armstrong. Don't buy shares of BlackRock's IBIT. Do not trust Larry Fink. I don't think we should do it. Even if they're publishing really bullish reports like this, and they're actually saying some really interesting things about Bitcoin. So we can see here, this is a thematic investing mid-year update. BlackRock just shared some interesting reports, some interesting charts. This report wasn't solely about Bitcoin. There was actually one mention about Bitcoin in this entire report. Now, what I found really interesting, you scroll down here and buried on page number 14, we can see this. De-dollarization is shifting central bank reserves to other assets. Okay. Global central banks are diversifying beyond the dollar and leading to a rise in other currency reserves like gold holdings and consideration for emerging assets like Bitcoin. BlackRock is literally saying the quiet part out loud. I think this is really interesting that this report came out in the exact same week that Fidelity is talking about in-kind Bitcoin redemptions. Fidelity is a serious player. This is really interesting. And I think this is something we need to pay very, 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 very close attention to. Because I can't say that we're on a live stream. What I will say is that I think right now, the next 6 months, this is kind of a mission critical kind of time zone. Okay, I think right now we're kind of in this kind of lulled period. Everybody's, again, asking the question, why is the price of Bitcoin not rising? These morons like this kid keep talking about a supply shock. Why is the price not going up? And again, I've never tried to make the claim the supply shock in the short and the medium term affects the price in the short or the medium term. It absolutely doesn't. There's no data reflecting that. Spaghetti Boy is correct. There is no correlation between the price and Bitcoin on exchanges in the short term. But in the medium and the long term, I think people are not set up for what is coming. What is coming? Let me show you what I think is going to happen. And I think over the next, let's say 6 months. I don't want to say 6 years because that's too far out. But let's say over the next 6 months to 2 to 3 years, I think we're going to see some really interesting things. What we're going to see, it's just going to melt faces. It's as simple as that. I don't know another way to put it. I don't know another way to say it. I just think we're going to see Bitcoin hit the exponential part of its adoption curve. Again, this is the biggest thing that I think all of these models miss. Bitcoin is an exponential technology. It will be adopted in exponential waves. This is why I love this chart right here. This is called the stock to FOMO. Everybody talks about the stock to flow, the power law model. What I think is more interesting is something like this. This is the stock to FOMO, and I think it accurately accounts for what happens when Bitcoin reaches that critical mass, that inflection point. This is, again, I think the most directionally correct model. Now, again, let's be very clear here. All models will be broken. Every single one of them. FOMO is probably the most directionally correct model. That's what I will say. I don't think your power laws and your what else have we got? We've got the diminishing returns, the rainbow chart. I don't think these things accurately kind of reflects what happens when a technology goes mainstream, because that's what we're talking about here. Bitcoin is a technology. It's about to go mainstream. And I just don't think things like the stock to flow can predict what happens with Bitcoin when we go mainstream, because that day is coming. I don't think I don't think it's an absurd claim to say Bitcoin's going mainstream, especially considering we have ads like this being right now.
What is this archaic system?
Mother's maiden name? Leibowitz?
You're telling me this guy is how things get verified.
That's my job.
I'm just saying, you shouldn't have to buy $10 worth of gum if you just want 79 cents worth of gum. Why do you get charged your money to take your money from your account? And if you're out of money, they charge you for being out of money?
What?
An overseas transfer takes 5 days?
Business days.
Why?
What are they using? A Zeppelin?
I deposited the check Monday.
But Monday was a bank holiday.
Why is this the way it is?
A bank holiday?
This system makes no sense.
This makes no sense.
Who designed this system?
Ma'am?
Is this really the best we can do?
Hello?
Don't we deserve better?
I think ads like these coming out when they're coming out, while we're watching the available amount of Bitcoin on exchanges drop like an absolute rock, this is going to be the rocket fuel for the next move up in Bitcoin. I think it's as simple as that. I think when the number of Bitcoin hits 0 on the exchanges, I think we're going to see some absolutely wild things. I think the bull run is, I think what we're going to see is a different bull run. It's not going to be like previous bull runs. I don't think, I think all models are broken essentially. That's what I personally think. And I think things are really starting to heat up right now, especially when we start considering what is going on with nation states. So I've got some interesting data I want to show you guys regarding nation states and exactly how much Bitcoin they are buying right now, because it looks to be accelerating. And we also have some interesting data coming out that kind of disproves the recent investigation that was done into America's Bitcoin holdings. There's some rumors flying that maybe America was quietly dumping 150,000 coins on the open market recently, but we've got some truth to share surrounding that. Okay, before we get to that, again, what's the takeaway from this little paper Bitcoin discussion? Okay, how do we win? How do we bankrupt the exchanges? It's simple. You go to your exchange, if you've got Bitcoin on it, you withdraw the Bitcoin into self-custody, and you do not ever trust Brian Armstrong or BlackRock with your Bitcoin. Okay, if you don't hold your private keys, you do not hold your Bitcoin. It is absolutely as simple as that. Okay, I'm obsessed with self-custody with Bitcoin. I've literally got hardware wallets. Again, I've literally experimented with all of the hardware wallets in the Bitcoin space. And again, if you guys are looking for a hardware wallet, I highly recommend you check out actually what Ledger is building right now. They're making some really interesting hardware wallets. Ones that they call the Ledger Stacks, for example, they have a touch screen. Okay, this is really cool. I really like this. I know hardware wallets sometimes can be a little bit dinky to use, but I really like have built. Okay, it's a curved touchscreen that looks just like a mobile phone. Again, I'm always looking for OPSEC. Again, I've used all the hardware wallets. I like how Cold Card kind of looks like a calculator. I think that's super cool. OPSEC's super important. And I also like how the new ledgers actually look like a little mobile phone. Okay, I think that's super cool. So again, how do we defeat the paper Bitcoin plague? Buy Bitcoin. I always recommend like the Bitcoin well, who forces you to take custody of your Bitcoin by default. Again, what do you do after you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin well? Well, you actually have to sign up with them and give them an address so that they can send you the Bitcoin that goes straight into your very own hardware wallet. Again, I've used them all. They're all great. I highly recommend you check out what Ledger is building. They're actually going to give you guys $10 of free Bitcoin if you get a Bitcoin hardware wallet from them, linked down below in the description. So if you use that link, you can get $10 of free Bitcoin. And then once you've got your Bitcoin in a hardware wallet, please do not make the mistake of writing down your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words on paper. I always tell you, this is a terrible idea. Okay, you should put your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words onto titanium. And I think the best place to do that is with Stampseed, because they have the stainless steel. I think it's as simple as that. Okay, never ever trust anyone, but never trust paper. Okay, so again, you guys can also get 15% off anything you want to buy from Stampseed with that promo code Luke15. Okay, so that's how we beat paper Bitcoin. Okay, you take the Bitcoin off the exchanges, drain the exchanges, and then we find out what the real price of Bitcoin is. Now, speaking of the real price of Bitcoin, what I think is interesting is what we're starting to see regarding this investigation that was, ran recently regarding how much Bitcoin does America actually have. Because there was some rumors, there was some speculation that maybe America didn't have all of the Bitcoin that they had. And, while we're talking about, why the price of Bitcoin is not rallying or not pumping right now, I think we have to look at the 80,000 Bitcoin that was just dumped on the open market this week. This was one of the biggest dumps in Bitcoin history. We can see Galaxy Digital just sold 80,000 Bitcoin yesterday. And this came because a Bitcoin OG sold and gave Galaxy Digital 80,000 coins worth $9 billion. And what I think is absolutely fascinating is the fact that this was one of the biggest sells in Bitcoin history. Now, what did the price do? Let's take a look at exactly what the price did. Okay, this is, again, interesting. Well, right now, Bitcoin is still at $118,000. And all of this dumping and all of this talk of dumping, you can see it didn't have a big impact on the price. We had a little 5% correction here, but it looks like Bitcoin's recovered pretty quickly. And it looks as if, hey, it's probably going to go higher. I mean, hey, in the short term, who knows what's going to happen? But I think for Bitcoin to be as resilient as it is right now at $118,000 a coin, that is incredibly interesting to me, especially when we start considering the fact that, hey, maybe America actually holds the Bitcoin. Okay, again, there's been a lot of speculation recently surrounding whether, America actually holds the Bitcoin that they're supposed to hold on the balance sheet. Because there was a report recently that made the allegation or the claim that America only holds 28,000 Bitcoin. And that is true if you look at the different departments of the US. So you've got the US Marshals, the US Treasury. Again, it's a little bit of a convoluted system trying to find what the truth is. But we can see here, America, 198,000 Bitcoin. They're the number one holder of Bitcoin. It was a little bit of a shock when that rumor started circulating on Twitter. But what I find interesting is that Arkham Intelligence has come out and once again clarified what actually happened recently. So look at this tweet. This tweet's great. Did the US government just sell 170,000 Bitcoin? $20 billion worth? No. This was so we can see very clearly Arkham Intelligence, they bring all of the data, all of the receipts. We can see this Freedom of Information request response from the US Marshals Service cites them as holding 28,000 Bitcoin. But other departments of the US government also seize and hold Bitcoin, including the FBI, DOJ, DEA, and US Attorney's Office. So we can see Arkham clarified the US government currently holds at least 198,000 Bitcoin. This is really interesting. And they do this across multiple different addresses held by different government arms. None of this has moved for 4 months. So we can see they run all the data. I mean, have a look at that. Arkham, they do have all of the addresses here on Arkham. I think that's fascinating. And they list all of the addresses with the Bitcoin. And they still think that the American government is sitting on $24 billion worth of Bitcoin. So did they sell? No. It doesn't look as if the US government sold at all, which I think is super promising. Again, what's the number one rule of Bitcoin? Never, ever, ever sell your Bitcoin. You should never sell your Bitcoin, especially this bull run. This is a message I've been really trying to, drill into you guys. Never sell your Bitcoin. Again, I think the best tool that's been built recently for you guys that enables you to never sell your Bitcoin is Bitcoin-backed lending. So you can actually borrow against your Bitcoin, not take the tax hit, but get the liquidity for the Bitcoin that has increased in value exponentially. I think the best platform to do this in a safe way, again, caveat, let's really talk about that. You need to do this in a very safe way. And this is why I like what FIREFISH is building. They are a fully backed Bitcoin peer-to-peer lending market. Okay, so you can actually take loans on FIREFISH and get liquidity for your Bitcoin instantly in literally hours. Okay, I've actually taken out a couple of loans on FIREFISH to check it out for myself. You guys can see I've got a couple of loans here. Again, I only recommend products I use myself. You can see I've got a couple of loans here on FIREFISH, and I think they're a really cool option for those people wanting to actually make investments this Bitcoin bull run, or just simply spend some of their Bitcoin without taking the tax hit. I really like what FIREFISH is doing. They're even going to give you guys 30% off your first loan if you use a promo code Luke. So again, you can check out everything you need for FIREFISH linked down below. I do have a link to their website. Check them out. And again, I've used the product. I love the product. I've used a ton of different hardware wallets. I've got a ton of them here. I've got cold cards. I've got Bitboxes. I've got ledgers. I've got them all. I've played around with them all. Again, if you want to grab a ledger, they're going to give you $10 of free Bitcoin if you use the link down below in the description. That's why I think they're a great option. Super easy to use. They've got a lot of options, and they're going to give you $10 of free Bitcoin if you use the link down below. So again, this is how we beat the paper Bitcoin. We take custody of our Bitcoin. We don't trust exchanges. When you do borrow against your Bitcoin, you do it carefully. Don't go leveraging the house to borrow against your Bitcoin. I actually have a really interesting breakdown coming. It's going to be called my Bitcoin exit strategy for 2026. And I show you guys just how much or just how little you should be using to borrow against your Bitcoin. That's a topic for another day. The topic I really want to focus on today is why these models are going to be broken. Okay, I don't think these guys can account for what's happening with all of this Bitcoin leaving the exchanges and these new announcements of now Fidelity coming out and pushing for in-kind Bitcoin redemptions. This is huge. This is actually massive. And I'm very, 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 very interested in what comes next. Alejandro, the best time to sell was July 14th. The second best time is today. All right, if you're selling your Bitcoin, I'm praying for you guys in the comment section. Good luck. That's all I'm going to say. If you're selling your Bitcoin, never sell your Bitcoin. Never, ever, ever, ever sell your Bitcoin. This is an interesting comment. I'm going to investigate for you guys a little bit further. Completely transparently, I actually don't know the answer to that question. Whether it's the plebs like you and I who can use these in-kind redemption tools, or whether it's just the institutions. I might look into it. I might talk about that more in a live stream I've got for you guys maybe tomorrow, because I'd be super interested in what exactly is happening. Dwight was just in Thailand. Hello, Dwight. Interesting. Thailand is not accepting Bitcoin yet. Interesting. I might actually go and investigate that soon for you guys. I'm making my first Asia trip in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be speaking at the BTC Asia conference. So again, if you guys are going to be going to that conference, come say hello. Come tell me I've got a terrible haircut in person. I will be speaking at that conference. It's going to be a blast. You also have some really interesting speakers there. The MetaPlanet team is going to be there. Again, if you don't have your tickets, you guys can get 10% off your ticket if you use the promo code linked down below in the description of today's video. Come say good day. Should be a blast. Should be a great conference. Speaking about traveling, actually, and speaking about Mexico, I just recently started a brand new YouTube channel. So again, I've done a lot of traveling. I've hit probably 50 different cities over the past 4 years since I've been traveling, living on a Bitcoin standard the whole time. If you want to know what Bitcoin adoption is like around the world and just get a little bit of a peep into what I'm doing in my free time, highly recommend you subscribe to our new YouTube channel. Posted the first video yesterday where we talked about the 5 tips I wish I knew about living in Mexico before I went there. So that YouTube channel is called The Digital Fugitive. Could be the digital refugee, an Australian refugee for those who don't know. But with all that said, guys, check that out. If you want some more travel content to watch in the meantime before my next live stream, which may or may not be tomorrow. And with all that said, hope you enjoy your Saturday. I'll see you tomorrow.